In part 7 of Confessions of a Collection Agency Lawyer, former collection agency lawyer Mark Silverthorn reveals that he filed for personal bankruptcy in connection with debts totaling more than $100,000.
Is it true that you have filed for bankruptcy in the past?
Yes. Yes, it is true. I am a bankrupt.
When did you file for personal bankruptcy?
It would have been November of 2019.
How much money did you owe to your creditors when you filed for bankruptcy?
Well, it would have been over $110,000. My biggest creditor was CIBC, and that would have been for more than $62,000. So CIBC, here's to you and your $62,000. My number two creditor was the Canada Revenue Agency and my friends over there, and that was $27,000. So cheers to Canada Revenue Agency. My third largest creditor was the Toronto Dominion Bank, and I owed them over $20,000. And a shout out to the Toronto Dominion Bank. I actually like the people at TD. They always treated me really well. My fourth largest creditor was a debt buyer, CBV Collection Services, so they would have purchased some kind of debt, and that was for about $650. And my final creditor was Virgin Mobile for $117, and that was in connection with my daughter's cell phone bill. I was paying her cell phone bill, and there were issues with trying to cancel her account. And I can recall having 4 telephone calls with the customer service people at Virgin Mobile, and they've got to have the worst customer service in the world. Richard Branson, instead of going into space, he should be spending more money on customer service at Virgin Mobile.
Before you filed for personal bankruptcy, did you ever attend a judgment debtor examination?
Yeah, and I should explain what a judgment debtor exam is. CIBC sued me. I had an outstanding credit card and an outstanding line of credit with CIBC, and they sued me. And there was no point for me filing defense. I didn't have a defense, so they got a default judgment against me. And when a creditor obtains a judgment against a person, they're entitled to do what's a judgment debtor exam. And at a judgment debtor exam, a lawyer for the creditor will show up, and the judgment debtor, in this case being me, would show up, and the judgment debtor would provide copies of relevant documents, things like previous income tax returns, copies of pay stubs, things like that. And they would meet at an office, and there would be a stenographer there to record the proceedings. And the lawyer would ask the judgment debtor questions. Now, I was not a big fan of CIBC, so I thought, well, I'm going to provide them with all the documents. I'm going to provide them with more documents than what they were entitled to, but I'll have some fun with them at the judgment debtor exam. So at the judgment debtor exam, I wore my bathing suit. Now, some of you are asking, Mark, did you wear a t-shirt? And the answer is no, I wore a muscle shirt. So the CIBC, they sent some hotshot lawyer from Toronto to do the judgment debtor exam, and they thought that I was involved in all kinds of shady dealings to avoid paying any monies to CIBC. And I think, at the end of this 90-minute judgment debtor exam, they'd sort of come to the conclusion that maybe I wasn't doing anything nefarious.
Why did you decide to file for personal bankruptcy?
Well, it was actually a no-brainer. if I did a cost-benefit analysis, let's look at the advantages. I owed $110,000 to my creditors, and if I were to file for personal bankruptcy, that $110,000 in unsecured debt would be discharged or forgiven, and the only cost that I would be out of pocket is the $1,800 that I would have to pay to the licensed insolvency trustee. It costs $1,800 in Canada to file for personal bankruptcy. Now, I was very fortunate that when I filed for personal bankruptcy, I did not have to surrender any assets to the licensed insolvency trustee. In Canada, each province has exemptions when it comes to personal property. And if a person can take advantage of those exemptions, then they may not have to surrender any of their assets to the trustee at the time that they file for personal bankruptcy. And this is one of the reasons why people with significant assets would prefer to do a consumer proposal as opposed to a filing for personal bankruptcy. The second advantage that I had was that I was not in a position where I would have to make surplus income payments, because in Canada, under the Federal Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act, if you earn more than a certain amount, and I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 annual income, then you have to pay 50% of the amount over the $30,000 to the trustee for a period of 21 months for a first-time bankrupt, and there's circumstances under which that 21-month period may be extended. So I was in a very advantageous position where I would file for personal bankruptcy. At the cost of $1,800, I would wipe out $110,000 in debt. I would not have to surrender any assets to the trustee. I would not have to pay any surplus income payments. And then here's the kicker. At the time, I was in a position where potentially I was in a position to inherit money. And if I were to file for personal bankruptcy, then any future inheritance would be beyond the reach of my creditors. And if I had not filed for personal bankruptcy, then my creditors could have gone after the estate of someone who was leaving money to me, and they could have gone after the money that would be my inheritance. So it really was a no-brainer for me to file for personal bankruptcy. Oh, there's one other advantage. I provide advice to people who have debt problems, and if I actually go through the process of filing for personal bankruptcy, it would be a learning experience for me, and I would be in a better position to provide advice to people who are having debt problems. Now, let's talk about the disadvantages. None. The only disadvantage that I could see was for my ego and my reputation. At some point, it might become public that I had filed for personal bankruptcy, and some people might think less of me because of that. You guys aren't going to tell anybody that I filed for personal bankruptcy, are you? Like, you're not filming this, are you? No, good. Okay. I was worried that Canadians might find out that I'd filed for personal bankruptcy. Oh, thanks.
What do you do now?
I run a firm. It's called Debt Coach Silverthorn, and I provide advice to Canadians who are struggling with debt. My firm has a website. It's called debtcoachsilverthorn.ca, and on that website, we've got all kinds of articles that are helpful for people who are dealing with debt problems. We've got all kinds of YouTube videos, and I offer one-on-one coaching, and that's in the form of 30-minute telephone consultations. So, our firm, Debt Coach Silverthorn, we're a tremendous resource for Canadians who are struggling with debt.